It's that moment where you think, is the mic on? And I think it is. So good morning. Thank you so much for being here on a very brisk November morning. My name is Stephanie Fox-Knapp, and along with my colleague Ling-En Liu, we are the curators of Found in Translation, Explorations by 8 Contemporary Artists. And I hope all of you have had the opportunity to go down to the galleries to see this exhibition that reveals how some of the very talented artists that you see here, and I hope that you will see at our next program, are able to use their practices to turn very complex ideas revolving around things like identity, home, place, relationships, and the topic of today's conversation, memory, into incredible art installations. So I don't want to take up too much of our time because these are the folks that you're here to hear from today. But I would just like to introduce to you Jan Kennedy, who is the program head of art history and also the Asian Studies program at the Kansas City Art Institute. And then she will take the program from there and to introduce our speakers. But again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Thank you to KE and to Sarah Hyde-Schmiedler, our colleagues in the program department, and to my co-curator, Ling-En. Thank you.
So yes, I'm testing my mic a bit. Yes. So thank you for being here. Yes, we appreciate you sitting in here on a beautiful Saturday. And so what I will do is first introduce all of our artists, and then we'll have a panel discussion revolving around that idea of memory. So first of all, I'll introduce, let me go in order here. Hyeyoung Shin was born in Korea, where she received a BFA in painting from both Hong-Ik University and Kyongsung University of Korea. She moved to Buffalo, New York in 2002 and earned an MFA in printmaking from the University of Buffalo in 2010, where she also taught. In 2013, she joined the Art and Art History Department at UMKC, where she is now Associate Professor of Print Media. Her sculpture, art books, and drawings have been widely exhibited. She has received noteworthy residencies as well. Most recently was the 2017 Scuola Internazionale di Grafica selected residency in Venice, Italy. In 2021, the Morgan Paper Conservatory selected summer artist in residency in Cleveland, Ohio. And then in 2022, most recently, the Otis College of Art and Design selected summer residency. She also received numerous grants and awards, most notably the Arts KC Award Featured Artist Grant, the University of Missouri Research Board Grant Award, and Arts KC Inspiration Grant, Arts KC Regional Art Council in Kansas City, Missouri. Hyeyoung Shin has exhibited across the U.S., including solo shows at the Fine Art Gallery at San Francisco State University, UB Anderson Gallery of the University of New York, Buffalo, and 2020 Gallery of the Robert Blackburn Printmaking Workshop of the Elizabeth Arts Foundation, New York City, New York. Big Orbit Gallery, Buffalo, New York, Western New York Book Arts Center, Buffalo, New York, and has been featured in many group shows nationally and internationally. Most notably, too, Shin's paper sculpture, Immeasurable, won the Best in Show for the Cambridge Art Association's 2021 prize show. And her paperfoot casting project, Tide, found a significant and moving presence in the Women to Watch 2020 paper routes at the National Museum of Women in the Art, Washington, D.C. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
We also have Shreepad Joglekar, came to the US from Mumbai, India. He holds a BFA from Sir J.J. Institute of Applied Art in Mumbai with a specialization in visualization, and an MFA from Texas Tech University with a major in photography and a minor in drawing. He is currently an associate professor and photography area coordinator in the art department at Kansas State University. His work has also been shown in several galleries in the US, Canada, China, Cuba, Egypt, Germany, India, Poland, and the UK, and he's presented at interdisciplinary conferences in the US, France, and the UK. He has been awarded artist residencies at the National Center for Contemporary Art in Kronstadt, St. Petersburg, Russia, the Weir Farm National Historic Site in Branchville, Connecticut, the Millet Colony for the Arts in Austerlitz, New York, an artist-in-residence studio in Paducah, Kentucky. His recent exhibitions include Non-Places of Intelligence at Portico Library Gallery, Manchester, UK, and Rural America at Piramal Gallery, National Center for the Performing Arts, Mumbai, India. His work is held in the permanent collections of Center for Photography as an Art Form in Mumbai, India, the Center for Fine Art Photography in Fort Collins, Colorado, Harper College Educational Foundation Art Collection in Palatine, Illinois, and Chashma Nonprofit Group in New York. He's received recent grants in 2018 and 2019 from the Northwest Kansas Economic Innovation Center, Incorporated, the Union of Concerned Scientists, Kansas Creative Industries Commission, through the Kansas Department of Commerce, for a collaborative, interdisciplinary documentary project, Hungry Heartland, focusing on food accessibility and insecurity in Kansas. Such a worthy endeavor. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And Hong Chun Zhang, born in China and raised among artists. Hong Chun Zhang received her BFA from the Central Academy of Fine Arts in Beijing before moving to the United States in 1996 to pursue an MA from California State University, Sacramento, and then an MFA from the University of California, Davis. Hong established her studio practice in Lawrence and has been represented by Ha Contemporary Gallery in the Kansas region since 2015. She also has exhibited her work nationally and internationally at venues including the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., the Asia Society Texas Center in Houston, Texas, the Japanese American National Museum in Los Angeles, California, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Oslo, Norway, the Centraal Museum in Utrecht, Netherlands, the 9th, and also participated in the 9th Shanghai Biennale in China, and Ink Studio in Beijing. Recent exhibitions took place at Middlebury College Museum of Art in Vermont and the Milan Royal Palace in Milan, Italy in 2020, right during the pandemic, too. She received the Daedalus Foundation MFA Fellowship and a grant from the Polak Krasner Foundation. And she also attended artist residency programs at Scuola Internazionale di Grafica in Venice, Italy, and the Skowhegan School of Painting and Sculpture in Maine. Her work can be found in many public and private collections, such as the Sylvain Levy DSL collection in Paris, the White Rabbit collection of contemporary Chinese art in Sydney, Australia, the Ministry of Culture of China in Beijing, Harvard Art Museums, and the Spencer Museum of Art at KU in Lawrence. Currently, Hong is a resident artist at Studios Inc. in Kansas City and will be until 2024. And her work will be featured at the new Kansas City International Airport to be appreciated by travelers from all over. So thank you for being here, Hong.
Thank you.
And we also have on stage with us Joy Ruan, who came to the Midwest from Hunan, China, and is now residing in this area. She is a collector of items of material culture, especially coming from the later Qing dynasty. So we're talking about 1800 to the early 20th century. She also recreates and beautifully reinterprets aspects of older and revered Chinese culture through hairstyles, clothing, and accessories that are highlighted through performative experiences involving music, dance, and significant spaces. So thank you for being here, Joy. So we will proceed onto a discussion with our panelists. But before we do so, I want them to say a little bit about themselves, speak for themselves, a little bit about their art, their practice, and collecting.
Hi, my name is Hyeyoung Shin. Thanks for the great introduction. I'm project artist who has trained in many art practices in drawing, painting, printmaking, and other stuff. And I always seek to find the way that I can create something that related to human figure. So theatrical body figure is kind of central part of my practice and my artwork. And I always want to create something that I've been deal with, with kind of complexity of estrangement or isolation and social, pressure, and also language barrier through my kind of life. And I hope that kind of that my art practice give me some sense of like a coping. Also the healing process that I could always kind of make inside of my studio. So I also been kind of fascinated by human body that holds and express so much of like emotional and then physical human condition that we can kind of create some kind of empathy throughout our lives. So that always gave me some sense of like a sense of belongings and how we can create some types of like conversation throughout my work. So yeah, thank you.
My name is Shri. That's the simpler version of the full name, of course. I came to the US in 2003 as a graduate student. Before that, I received a bachelor's degree in what you call here as graphic design or visual communication design. I've worked as a designer before coming here, as a photographer. Most of the photography that I knew at that time was just self-taught by reading books. After coming to the US as a graduate student, as much the learning in the master's program that has created who I am, the experience of leaving the home also is a major part of that. And so my work, as I am sort of always evolving, because I see myself as always sort of learning, because I'm always away from where I relate to mostly as being at home, I'm always sort of like in a foreign land, in a foreign language. And so my work has evolved quite a bit since I came here. When I came here, I used to make photographs mostly of people. I was very interested in a person and the actual presence of the person in a space. And since that, I've kind of been exclusively now taking pictures of places. I've hardly taken a picture of a person for the last 10 years for serious scholarly work as such. I take pictures of people. My son is right here, and so he's he's flooding my cell phone every day. The main evolution I see in my work over the last decade or a little over that is also intellectual. So the more I'm making work and sort of the more I become settled in this land and this space, my orientation as to looking at how we use photographs or what we take pictures of, what becomes the subject matter and why we take pictures, why we make work in the first place, all of that is continuously evolving. Lately, it has mostly been framed by my reading of Marxist theory, my reading of architectural theory, and theories regarding place. So the work that I'm showing here is kind of coming out of new explorations based on some of that intellectual stimulus. Of course, the baggage I have from India, literal and intellectual. And it is also guided now, especially due to the last two and a half years of pandemic. So most of the work now I'm engaged with is also done quite differently than traditional photography. So the pictures I'm now making are pictures of things that you can't see or can't photograph with traditional camera. I'm making pictures of sounds imagined as spaces. So that's the trajectory. I'm going from taking pictures of people in a place or sitting down to I'm now making pictures of what I remember hearing, the sound waves that kind of make an impression on your mind. So that's where I am right now.
Hi, my name is Hong Chun Zhang. In Chinese, called Zhang Chun Hong. Zhang is my last name, so in Chinese, last name always goes first. Hong means red in Chinese, and spring means, Chun means spring. So I'm a red spring. Was born during the Cultural Revolution, so it's a very revolutionary Chinese name for girl. Hong, color red. And I was born to a family of artists and was trained in fine style Chinese ink painting at the Central Academy of Fine Arts in Beijing. Then came here in 1996 to further my study in studio art. Went to graduate schools in California and developed my long hair themed work. So my work is incorporate traditional ink medium with contemporary idea, with also rich layered concepts and fine details in a very massive scale. And the strength of my work is about the meticulous details with ceiling to floor sized work. The long hair piece is really a signature or well received for my audience. I use this embodied long hair as a reference to my personal identity, but also as a reference beyond something that beyond the hair. So I use that as a reference to me as a sister, a Chinese immigrant, also as a woman. So you can find that layered concepts in my work, shifting from beginning of personal identity and explore to other areas like gender, political, social concept, and also dealing with Kansas nature, environment, and recent works has a lot to do with social justice and equity. So yeah, that's about my work and myself. Thanks.
Well, it's definitely my pleasure to be here today. My name is Joy Ruan. I was born in China, and I came here when I was around 7 or 8 years old. And ever since I was like a very little girl, one of my fondest memories is going to antique stores with my father, just trying to find a treasure among like knickknacks, you know, find that diamond in the rough. And I just, since then, I developed a long passion of collecting various objects. And as I got older, I really started to appreciate, of all different antiques I collected, actually Chinese antiques, because after all, that is my heritage. And something that I like audience to remember is, even though you hear all kinds of negative news about China and politically it's horrible right now, right? And I really wish it was different. But something that people have to remember is Chinese people is not its government. We are just China. That is what China is. It's not just a communist country, but it's the people. The people is a heart and soul. And the culture of Chinese people is extremely deep and very beautiful. So if you push the political side aside, you can focus on the culture and the beauty behind the history. And because I have such a love in history, my first major was actually in Eastern language and culture with a minor in Chinese. So as I got older, obviously, I started forgetting, you know, a little bit about my culture. But through my father, with these, you know, adventures in the antique stores and in thrift stores, I started to really fall in love with my culture, and I want to discover, you know, who was I? What was my ancestor like? It's really fascinating. And something that I found the most fascinating was actually the Qing dynasty, which is the last dynasty in China. Ironically, it's not run by the Han people, it was run by the Manchus. I just found that whole history very interesting, and of course, obviously, for the most obvious reason, it was the easiest for me to find artifacts from that time period. And as a woman, I feel very fortunate to be born in America and in a modern society, and obviously not in China in the Qing dynasty. As you can imagine, like most women during that time period, women are just to be seen, beautiful, silent. They had no power, cannot own land, cannot own anything really. Their job was to obey their husbands with their flip bound, and I'm sure many of you know what flip binding is. It's a very painful practice that women practice. Since in the beginning of age of 3 to 4 years old, they break their feet to make these perfect, tiny feet, about 3 inches. It's called the golden lotus. And to me, that's so shocking. Like, wow, that's painful. Why are women treated that way? And it's not just with Chinese culture, European women too, with tight lacing. It's very fascinating to me. And so I decided to look further into the history of women from the Qing dynasty, Manchus, and the Han. And through these different artifacts, I just found it so amazing. And I often wonder, what is their story? What is their memory? What would the women be like back then? Yeah, you can read about them, about history books, and you see some black and white pictures. But when I started collecting some robes and I saw the intricate delicacies of the embroidery and the beautiful details and kingfisher hairpins, I just discovered there's just so much to see than what the most audience realize. Yeah, sure, I can do reproduction clothing, but it will never be as fantastic as if I were to wear a real piece from the time. That way it'll really transport the audience from the Qing dynasty, right? So I had a great idea. What if I could get a group of people to wear my collection to perform traditional Chinese culture in dancing, singing, tea ceremony, incense ceremony, etc. I thought it'd be a fantastic idea, but it took me a while to find a partner that shares in my similar interests, and I was very lucky. In 2018, I met a good friend of mine named Max Zhang, and he made my dream into a reality. And of course, I'm very fortunate to be able to work with the Nelson. And since then, we've done performances and exhibition, type of videos, as well as short videos to showcase my collection in various different ways. And a picture, as you can see here, is one of the photos that I took in the Chinese museum upstairs. So what a fantastic idea. Everything in this picture is actually part of my collection from the Qing dynasty. Every hairpin, every piece, even the fingernail protection, as you can see, are all authentic pieces. And it just transports you really back into that time to see what these women were like. And it just brings such a deeper layer into their lives. And it makes it even more special is because even our surrounding, our background, every piece that you see in the background, the painting, are actually all antiques, of course, from in the museum. So I thought that is definitely fantastic. I have a few pictures to share. These are all taken from the Nelson, which is seriously such a pleasure to work with. It made my vision and just my dream come true. This is an opera singer, actually. This is actually my wonderful partner, Max. This is him in makeup, in full Beijing opera makeup. I'll just quickly show you a few pictures. Seeing this, I feel like transport me back. So after doing a few performances, there's a problem I realized with my vision. After all, what I'm wearing is antiques, and they're fragile. And it's really hard and almost impossible to fix it because we lack the expertise and the profession to be able to re-alter the clothes so that it would be preserved. And for me, it is more important to preserve these pieces for future generations. So I decided, well, if I can't, I'll do the next best thing. Why don't I try to replicate as close as I can? And if I do it that way, it opens up my time. Instead of focusing on the Qing, I could focus on other dynasty, such as the Tang dynasty, what you see on the left, or on the left and right, early Tang and then later Tang dynasty, as well as Ming dynasty. So I figured instead of showing you what I do, why not show a quick video of what our group is about? So I hope you enjoy this short video. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that. So that just shows you a little bit what we do and what we are about. I mean, I feel like these women in the past, obviously, no longer can speak for themselves, but through their treasured objects, that we can actually hear their voices imprinted into them. And because I do a showcase like this, they definitely can leave their imprints on us this way. And through the action of collecting, I'm passing on memory to not only me, but my future generations. And something that I realized as a collector is we never really truly own these pieces. We're just mere stewards or just keepers of these objects until we preserve these future objects for future generations, either viewing it from a private collector like me or through the Nelson. I feel like this is something wonderful. We will always and should always treasure a museum. Thank you.
Thank you.
谢谢.
Thank you, Joy. That was wonderful to see those items be recontextualized and also just brought to life again, and in this good context of the Nelson-Atkins Museum too. I want to segue now into the panelists' questions. I just have some questions residing around memory and your work, and you can tackle them as you wish. But the topic for our panel discussion is memory. The exhibition title, found in translation, situates itself around the idea that you are artistically translating your experiences rooted in different regions of Asia and now in the Kansas City area. That translation is made through variable styles, media, processes. So my question is, how do materials, processes, or the choice of medium intersect with memory for you?
Shall I start?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Maybe you can go
Well,
on.
the process of making and choice of mediums are all part of my memories. I started watching my parents painting in Chinese traditional ink medium when I was very young, like age of 6, and I really enjoy that process. Then at the age of 6, my parents would give me and my sisters all the traditional Chinese ink painting supplies to let us to practice. So from early on, I had my beautiful memories of not watching my parents doing it, but also myself to practice. Then at 15 years old, both me and my twin sister and my older sister, we all went to Beijing to study fine arts. I went to attached high school to the academy, spent 4 years concentrating in all the foundational courses with different medium, printmaking, Chinese ink painting, or oil painting, sculpture, and then spent another 4 years at the academy only working on single medium. That was fine style Chinese ink painting. Even though my parents had taught me, or I practiced myself with both styles, freestyle and fine style, I found the fine style is very rewarding. I enjoy the meditative process. Also, I love to see the finished work from beginning to end. So I carried that training with me to America. Even though at graduate school in the US, I had the freedom to explore other medium, I still going back to use my traditional medium in ink with contemporary idea. For example, the work that is showing now at the block building, it reflects my memories from the past, not only incorporating my earliest memory of media use, but also the concept of family tree, family roots. You know, I was born in the 70s in China. There are a lot of revolutionary propaganda posters and sculptures, like those two figures, male and female, and the child in the air. Those impact of my memories still in my mind. So I kind of adopt 2 layers not just concept, also the medium into my work. So my memory really connect me from the past to present, from China to America. Thanks.
I got it. I can go next. It's difficult to talk about specific medium in the traditional sense when it comes to what I'm doing now, but it doesn't. It does have a direct connection to the medium that I was trained in primarily, or the media, basically photography and drawing, and I have. Being a photographer, I inherently have a kind of scientific engagement with the means of production of art, because most of the times we are engaging with machines. Cameras are thought to be clocks that that basically allow the light to create an imprint. There is always a lot of chemistry, a lot of knowledge of mixing different materials together, proportions and so on, that goes into practicing darkroom. And my interest in science has also kind of led me to expand into thinking about photography in a much more sort of fundamental kind of way, as simply an act of creating an impression using physical properties of light, right? When it comes to thinking about what we are doing as photographers, it almost always occurs to me as we are always essentially taking things out of context. We are present in a time and space. We are witnessing a moment as such. And we create an impression of it out of context. We can never hold the entirety of our experience. As a photographer, that always is underscoring my experience when I take a picture, that I am only taking this part and so much is left out. And so this idea of taking things out of context is really central as part of the process for me. The other thing that I feel as a photographer that material always makes me aware is the fact that there's always a process of translation. Something that I saw, something that I'm witnessing, and the picture that I make of it is a process of translation through me as the medium, really. Camera is just mere machine there. The operator is actually translating what my vision allows me to comprehend, or I think that I comprehend, for a picture that somebody else then tries to comprehend. The work that I'm doing now is sort of a very loose interpretation or expansion of what I would call a photograph. In the past decade, I've been interested in taking pictures of places. During the COVID pandemic, with restrictions on movement, I had to sort of re-envision what can I do as a photographer where I can't really go to places. Then I started kind of engaging with creating landscapes to then take photographs completely digitally. It's a little bit complicated process, but in as simply as I can put it, it's a matter of taking sounds. These are found sounds or recorded by me, looking at the frequencies that are in those sounds, and then trying to imagine basically those frequencies as having heights, as mountains, as a vast landscape of terrain that is undulating. And the undulations, the mountain ranges, so as to say, are formed based on what sound I am interpreting. Because my interest is in place and space and land, for me, the pandemic gave this challenge of how do I create places that I can photograph. And it kind of intersected with some social dynamics that we have seen in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years, which gave a lot of fodder to what kind of sound I could interpret to be a place that other people can visit. So the work that I'm doing now is in a way taking sound, creating to creating what appears to be a place from that sound and taking a photograph of that place, which is what I'm presenting here in the museum work. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, I'm always fascinated by hear all this amazing artist idea. Well, you know, as we all are artists who wanted to choose some particular medium or material to create something or encapsulating our memories or experience in terms of process of like art making. And we, I think, consider ourselves always kind of like a multiple artist, even if you are trained in very classical, traditional art medium, you always wanted to push ourselves to kind of develop in the more kind of like a contemporary, you know, approach. So, but for me, sometimes very basic material like a pen and pencil or a pencil and you know, paper, as if I wanted to kind of like a, you know, write a diary every day. So I always go back to my studio and starting my day with very simple material like a pencil and pen. As you already know that how long we kind of train to write or draw since our young age. And then I just kind of like, you know, give myself a little moment of how I can expand that idea into different medium later on. So when I train as a painter, I love the idea of like creating some like different types of like you know, colors with different pigments and different surfaces. But when I introduced to printmaking, that just hit me so hard because, you know, when you trying to create some kind of like a matrix on like either stone or copper plate or wood block, you spend so much time to manipulate that image onto that kind of surface, and then that's not the end of the art making, but you have to print on the paper or the fabric. So your memory translated into onto a different surface. And then it just kind of give you some sense of like how we can not just kind of like creating memory once, but also rebuild or recreate or kind of like resonate your image and multiple times. And then I really fascinated by that process. And then I just kind of learn about book art and paper making and also paper casting process. And then when I do the paper casting, I just kind of deal with this kind of thin layers of the paper that I sometimes made or sometimes purchased. And then it's just going to allow me to, keep that shape or the memory from the, you know, existing surface or sometimes directly from the human body. And that just kind of like so captivated for me in that particular process of like how I can recreating very physical forms from the very physical surface without kind of like interaction, without distraction. I'm sorry, distraction. So yeah, so my as Shiri mentioned, my process evolved from very basic, very elementary to the very advanced, and then very kind of like further out to creating something completely new from very familiar one. Yeah.
Thank you. We often think of memory as being formed around a time and a place, but it's more complicated than that. And memories are often shaped by multiple senses or tied to emotions. Memories may be reconstructed or selective, erased, lost. Shri has already talked about how memories, at one point he discussed with us about how memories could be fragile and they create history. But they can be affected by happiness or trauma as well. They may be individual also or cultural. So I ask, as such, how might viewers, or how might you want viewers, or how might viewers variably connect to your art? And any one of you or all of you can address that.
Okay, I will start. Well, even though my work, especially the long hair themed work, is based from my Chinese culture and personal experience, I kind of wanted to create an open space for audience interpretation. For example, I use disembodied long hair without giving facial details. So the larger than life size scale figure covered with hair to create something that beyond hair. For example, according to East culture, Asian culture, that hair associate not just with the beauty, but also associate with growth and sexual energy and power. When people getting older, you noticed your hair condition change. When you're getting sick, same too. Your hair become, thinner and lose the energy and lost. So a lot of other relationship and reverses within the hair image. So I have met many of my audience, people from Middle East and Latin American. When they see my work, they found there's a relationship with their own culture or gender relationship. Doesn't matter whether they know my Chinese background or what. They can walk out from my work with their own interpretation. Same with the piece right now showing in the gallery at Nelson. It carries the same principle. I think the only part that need to be translated from my work is the process of making, which is Chinese fine style ink painting process. That is different from freestyle. Freestyle is done faster and spontaneous. Fine style requires a lot of careful plan each stage of making process, because working with ink on rice paper is unforgiving. In other words, you cannot make any mistake. Not like charcoal or oil paint. If you make a mistake, you can paint it over or use an eraser to get rid of. So that part needs to be translated and to introduce to my audience here. So I wish you can come to my workshop. Well, in January, I will lead a workshop for teachers in the Kansas area to show you the two different mediums, two different styles with ink medium, so you can more appreciate my work. Thanks.
I can go next, and I think it's a very interesting question, because it's always, it makes us speculate like how an audience, how somebody else who has not made the work is going to see the work in a way. The primary intention that I have, or I hope that carries through, is I want to create the images that I'm creating. Basically, I want to create a record. I'm most interested in creating a permanent record of something that is very fleeting, something that is very ephemeral, which is the sound. Memory of a sight can also be held imperfectly as a drawing or as a photograph. Memory of a sound is further difficult to hold on to and quantify, right? And to frame. And so my intention is to give physical presence or appearance of physical presence, because I'm not sculpting these waves, but I'm essentially creating an image as if these waves existed as a land, as a place that you can revisit in the form of a visual. So that's the intention behind creating the images, is to create a permanent record of otherwise which is ephemeral, way more than the geological forces changing our land or the climate changing the entirety of our species. The intention is also very pointed. When I think about making work, I have one audience member in mind. And that audience member, in a way, is the conduit to my connection to future. all of us have family. And I think the way I think about making anything now, it's about what I will communicate through that thing with my son. So that is the primary motive in a way, is communicating what I see valuable as that we need to hold on to these ephemeral experiences. But when I intend to sort of like, when I'm thinking like who is going to see this, I have only one audience member in mind.
Yeah, that's amazing point that you said. I mean, the Shri said that kind of, you know, ephemerality of memory. I think artists wanted to kind of capture that to be able to kind of show that in the next generation or even further generation. I think that's the kind of main motivation to be artist in some way. And I also believe that artists always perfect platform to share some experiences, memory, even if it's very personal one. But we can kind of share some kind of empathic moment to, you know, share us as a kind of like a human being. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm not really sure this is a good example, but you know, when you, for example, when you walk into the gallery and then you see this kind of beautiful portrait of someone that you don't know, and you later learn that that's the portrait of someone that artist actually very close to one who just passed away. And that information gives you some sense of like not just a kind of like a think of beauty of the portrait, but you can relate it to the story that the artist wanted to share with you. And then you just, at that moment, you start giving a much deeper meaning and understanding to the art piece. And then it's not just a kind of an image of someone, that particular someone, but it actually related with all of us as a human being who fears what, you know, death and illnesses and all this grief and mourning. So yeah, in that regard, I always want to hope that my viewer can relate to my art with their own imagination and with their own memory, so that I can kind of like, you know, speak through my art to, you know, kind of like have some kind of great conversation. So yeah.
I feel like, I like to say, I feel like through my medium, it's at first very easy for, I guess, I feel like in some ways, make the audience connect to the pieces they see versus in a museum. Oh, cool, you see an antique hairpiece, or oh, cool, I see a robe. But what does that really represent? It doesn't mean anything, right? But do you really consider what the story is behind it, right? What must have worn them? So I figured in that way, antiques or artifacts, as I displayed via video, via a person, it really kind of pulls the audience, it fully engages with you of what these women were like. And seeing it face to face is completely different than seeing like a cold object displayed in a museum or in a black and white photo, right? It's completely different. So I feel like my art has also grew in a sense, not only did I just start appreciating just the act of collecting, that doesn't really require much skill, right, much thought, but to be able to put things together, just an act of performing it adds a completely another layer. And something that I've discovered and I've learned through this process is not only did I learn the history aspect of it, I also learned how to embroider, for example, how to do paper cuts for a second, how to properly perform a tea ceremony, how to properly perform an incense ceremony, and actually my latest endeavor, which I'm actually find it really fascinating, is actually how to recreate kingfisher hairpins. Kingfisher hairpins is created with kingfisher feathers, actually. They're individually dotted into a fine piece of jewelry at silver and in gold wash. And obviously, getting my hands on real kingfisher feathers, completely unethical. So what I learned was sourced ethically peacock feathers, which is very similar shade of blue. And I've learned how to create jewelry pieces with that. And actually, I'm currently wearing my hairpiece right here. actually I created myself, which is a diancui, created with peacock feather that I created myself. So I feel like through the act of collecting, not only is that a memory, I have learned and progressed my skill of how to do these things that these ancient women done before, which I feel like connects me and the audience and transport them back in that time period, which I find very fascinating. I hope you guys do too.
I think that's an excellent point about the difference between the museum world and seeing those items behind glass or inaccessible, and how then you get that tactile quality, you get everything at a greater proximity than through what you do. So absolutely, thank you. We might, just very, very briefly, I think, we might have a little bit of time just to address one question, which I think is very interesting. How do you think your experiences connected to when you came to the United States, or the Midwest in particular, shaped your art and associated memories that inform it?
Yeah, that's a good question, Lars. You know, I spent my half of life in the US, 25 years, another half time in China. So, well, the memories is really reflect the time, how much time we spend in our own country and how many time in the new country. So the work I'm showing in the exhibition reflects on that. So it's a vertical composition, you know, half of the roots on the floor, the other half is the figure, family with the tree branches at the top. So the roots really reflects how much time I spent in China. That's my Chinese heritage. Mm-hmm. And the other half on top, that's the new family I created in the Midwest, Kansas. And the tree branches, you know, during the pandemic, I have seen a lot of, you know, stronger need for family connections. I have been taking walk closer to the nature in my backyard, you know, the open space of Haskell University. And I have seen a lot of trees, tree trunks that like, you know, figures to me every time I walk by. So I kind of connect that or mix with the things I have seen every day during the pandemic with the nature and the trees, the open space, and connect with my roots, with my background. And my work was not started like this. You know, the first 5 years when I came to America, my work's more directly dealing with my home country. You know, the things I mix a lot, direct connection with my families. So I had a 3-generation series. Then the more time I live in the US, I started to see the 2 different cultural experience because I witnessed and I observed. So after that, I moved to a long hair series, which is more, you know, about who I am, where I come from. And then after I moved to Lawrence in 2004, I was so inspired by the open space and the beauty of Kansas nature. My work started to move from static straight down hair and started to making a left, around, and turn. Those movements has a lot to do with the iconic tornado that gave me that inspiration. And for the pieces now in the museum, it also reflects who I am, how much time I spend in China, how I incorporate my past memories in regard to the medium and the concept with the new memories I experienced here.
For me, I think it's really interesting to kind of see like half being half and half. And I was wondering, like, yeah, that's a math problem because it will happen at several points in time, I think, at different times for different people. I'm at that maybe almost half, but what I find really important is how much time and what kind of formative experiences you have had in the home country before you come to before you go to a new place or next place, because I think we are more impressionable younger than later. And so for me, I think I came here right after, or well, maybe 5 years after having undergraduate degree. And I think I was very connected with comparative point of view, as in like, you know, everything for me was like, oh, this is too big a cup. We have these size cups in India, or oh, this is, you know, this is not a meal, you know. So there was all this comparative perspective that I came up after I landed here. That was the first kind of thing that I felt, and I remember. But over the years, having gone back to India, came back to US, I've kind of realized that maybe because the time when I came here, that's like early 2000s, what has happened in India since then, in terms of the amount of economic development in Mumbai especially, the change of landscape, change of people, change of culture, and what has happened here, I guess, as well in the last 20 years. I feel that more and more, I'm not as concerned about remembering India or remembering my, or you know, kind of connecting with memories from that that period. And I'm kind of enjoying the luxury of being an outsider all the time, in India as well as here, because I think that seems to be the permanent state of being an outsider. And my perspective then has changed to thinking about us as people rather than connecting to places and family and identity and individuality. I'm very concerned, like in our prior discussion, I was thinking like, I like to pose questions regarding memory, like, do we remember a time before currency, right? Like that's something that I'm kind of really interested in and more engaged intellectually, is about remembering us as human beings rather than, you know, our very short lifetime and cultural lifetime for that matter. So that is how, but that is a recent shift. I was certainly very much connected to thinking about from Indian point of view, Indian lens. But since that, I've kind of moved on to just thinking about everybody as being outsider here or somewhere else, and then thinking about what is our collective memory and legacy as people. That's something that I'm most concerned about.
I read a really short article a few weeks ago about what's the most stressful event in human life, and then moving is one of the top. And you know, thinking of like a moving from one place to another, and then if that is also like an international relocation, it's a completely kind of different you know, experience for you, because you are very vulnerable in that kind of like a new environment with different language and different culture, and you have to kind of like settle down, not just physically but also very culturally and emotionally. And I constantly relocated like for last 25 some years, and another calculation I have to go through, but I don't know, but it was a very humble experience for me. I graduated from 2 different colleges in South Korea before I came here. I was ready to be very pretentious artist, but you know, once I came here, I just realized that, oh, I'm nothing. And it was also a very different experience for me, because I was a young mother who has a young daughter with me. So my art career halted for a while before I found myself in a graduate school. And I had to just kind of start it from the very beginning of my art career. And that definitely gave me some sense of like, what I wanted to do for my art and for my family, and not as just the kind of artist, but also the individual. So, you know, there's a lot of like questions and struggles, definitely, but that is also gave me a good sense of like what I wanted to do for that human body, and like not only just kind of my body presenting in the sense of like a gallery exhibition or the kind of like art production, but I wanted to create some kind of dialogue with other people, how they struggle with their own moving experience or relocated experience in their life. And yeah, so my body, it just kind of gave me a better kind of or more concrete reason to creating more kind of in a human body figure that struggles and also still striving to find a way to kind of like navigate themselves in the world. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you.
You can tell from our English. If the English has a strong accent, you can tell the time when they came here. If you came here younger, you have a perfect English. If you came as an adult like me, or three of us, always have a.
Well, it depends on how many times they make you take TOEFL. Especially from personal experience. That's the funniest thing. That's actually interesting because when you come to here as a grad student from countries that don't speak English as their primary language, there is an expectation that you take a language test of English as foreign language, TOEFL. Yeah. But the funny thing is that your score expires. So you apply, you take TOEFL, and then
5 years, right?
2 years, and then you have to take it again. And that's what is interesting, like that there is a qualifier like before coming here, but then they think that, oh, you're going to forget, right?
You keep having to prove yourself worthy to be.
It'd be interesting if we take it here also.
I know. Gaining that kind of like a validation.
Every 2 years.
Exactly. It's
Some may fail.
It's a torture.
You and Hyeyoung said, coming to America from different country, different culture, meaning is new start from the beginning. Nobody knows your background.
Right.
You have to start it, not just language, your own career, your own personal and life, everything. So it's not easy, but it has been a positive experience, learning experience.
I mean, I definitely agree. I feel like as a young person coming here, I mean, I was only 7 or 8. Still coming here was very isolating for me. I didn't know I didn't speak a lick of English when I got here. It was a total culture shock for me, but I'm very lucky to be here, actually. I wouldn't be anywhere else in the world. I love America. And something that I find very fascinating is, I think this is why these women resonated with me, especially from the Qing dynasty, because they were so trapped. And that was what I was, trapped at home, like this little kid. What was I? I didn't have friends when I was 8 or 9, so my dad felt kind of bad for me, and that's when the antique shopping started. I mean, you think, oh my gosh, this is crazy. She must have a lot of resources at her expense. Actually, surprisingly, you know where most of the antiques that I found? Thrift stores, and which kind of breaks my heart. People don't realize what they have, and a lot of robes that I found are in horrible condition, and I actually fixed quite a bit of it myself, and I embroidered on some of it myself, so maybe not 100% best, restoration, but it is my collection, so I get to do what I see fit with it. So I did my best, and I feel like in this way, it's definitely a memory for all of us. And I actually have a little bit of a surprise for the audience. I actually bought one of my wonderful friend who's going to do a little performance piece for us, if she's ready. Yes.
北国有佳人，绝世而故里，一步情人城，在顾情人国。北国有佳人，绝世而独立，一顾情人城，在顾情人国。宁可知倾城与倾国，佳人难再得。
So I want to thank you for participating in this discussion, offering insights into your life and work. It's been a pleasure. I think we have time for maybe a couple of questions from the audience as well. So if you have.
Somebody got one question.
Please. Because I have more. If you
I'll bring you a mic.
Shri, you mentioned that you are enjoying being an outsider, whether you're in India or whether you're here. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Does that translate to independence or freedom or creative freedom, or where does that come from?
Sure. So the question is about the privilege of being an outsider, right? It's in a way kind of like trying to glorify the circumstances you can't change. So what I've seen or have felt before, for example, as a shortcoming, or as like feeling being outsider and so on, being discriminated about, manners in which I behave, or to some extent, it comes from one observation I made some time ago. I came across these movies that a French documentarian, Louis Malle, made in Mumbai. And they dated back to late 60s, so this is before my birth, but it showed me the places that I knew firsthand, like the back of my hand, in Mumbai. And in the opening of that documentary series, it's called Phantom India, Louis Malle says, like, I don't know what is going on here. I have no clue. I can't speak the language. I don't know what these people are doing, but I want to witness it and record it and pass it on to you. And I like that I don't understand this, because I don't have the bias. I don't know what's wrong, what's right. I'm just going to look around and record. And I think that has kind of become my, my perspective as to looking at the world, that I don't need to belong. I really feel that belonging may taint maybe my sort of like, it might shape the way I see things more than I would like. And so that's the idea of being a perspective, is a detached, cold, as much as possible, perspective towards the environment, towards our surrounding. I do feel that the more belonging nowadays I find is with ideas. And ideas that not necessarily came out of my head. I'm really not that smart. So these are ideas that I relate to, that come through my readings and my observation of the history, especially of us. And it feels that being an outsider here and in Mumbai, because all of the things in Mumbai have changed. Whenever I visit back, I hardly can recognize it. My wife went back to her neighborhood. She couldn't find her own street. Right. And this is not uncommon. I think some of these spaces have gone through such radical change. I'm now interested in more, besides sort of like, lamenting what used to be, I'm more interested in thinking about what makes these changes happen, and looking at them equally as an outsider when I'm looking around my environment here, as much as when I go to any other place. Yes.
We have time for.
Can you reflect? First of all, thank you all for a fantastic discussion. It was very informative, and I really learned a lot. Can you reflect on some of the interactions you've had with the audience after they've seen your work? Do you have any personal stories about interacting with audiences at a show or a presentation and their reaction to your work?
I haven't seen this show as yet myself, so I'm sorry. I will soon. Quickly, I used to do some more landscape photographs a few years ago. One of my last series of photographs is from Fort Riley, where they have these fake villages. These are theatrical sets for people to practice sort of like their tactics. as if when they would, the experience would be like as if when you go to Iraq or Afghanistan, what you will find. So there are these like Middle Eastern villages that are created. So I was photographing these places because for me it's like theater of war, like literally, right? Because you're acting up over there, you're creating muscle memory. And so I was making these pictures, and when I have shown them, I have gotten some really interesting feedback from people who have gone through training and their experience as to what it makes them become, because you are training in landscape that is made to look like desert, prairies covered with gravel, and then these are shipping containers made to look like hamlets in Afghanistan. So they're made to respond to space, but these places are devoid of people where they practice. And so that was an interesting insight that I got looking when somebody who trained in those sites came and talked to me looking at these photographs.
Over time, my audience receive my work differently. For example, I'm talking about audience in here. The first series, 3 Generations, my early work is more heavily involved with Chinese history and gender relationship back in China. When I first showed those series, also done with ink traditional medium, and I found they have a less understanding of my work. Then after that, I created 2 cultures series to show the difference and similarities between China and the US based from my own personal life experience and observations. Then I found there's more audience, attract more Western audience to understand my work. I did in oil medium. So in that medium, they know well, but the subject matter still dealing with duality in 2 cultures. Then after I created, long hair series, I feel like not only medium-wise, but also the subject is very universal. So my audience become more broader audience, feel like accessible to my work. And right now, I think if I show my work in China, Chinese audience knows the medium, the Chinese fine style ink medium very well, but the subject, maybe they don't know much because I have incorporated my experience in the US with my work. But vice versa, when I showed my work in traditional medium here in the US, the audience here to appreciate, understand the subject, the concept very well, but only the process part need to be translated.
Interesting.
I would like to add something to that. Do I need to go up there? Okay. So hi, my name is Max. I'm what Joe was talking about, and I did her hair. So I did I filmed the video and I did everyone's hair. So to answer your question, and I think, so even all my Chinese friends in the US or even Chinese friends in China, when I showed them this video, they were just amazed, because like it's not something professionally done by like a movie production, and them seeing that, it's just very surprising to them. And when I introduced this to my American friends who don't even know what Qing Dynasty was, they just introduced something new to them and introduced the beautiful cultural side and history side to those audience. And also when I am in the process doing the hair, I'm kind of also, I can't speak for Joy, but like when I'm doing it, I'm also kind of the audience to my own work. So like, in Joy's dressing room, doing her hair, it's kind of like really, I feel like I'm transported back in time, It feels like early in the morning, I'm doing someone's hair from Tang Dynasty is 2,000 years ago. And then I don't know if you remember the picture of the Beijing Opera picture. That was me. So back in time, female were not allowed to perform on stage. So all the female characters were performed by males. And so what you're seeing in the picture, the Beijing Opera gown is authentic piece from the Qing Dynasty. So it's 200 years ago. So when I put on that, and when I was put that gown on myself, like I could see up close, there were makeup leftovers on the color, the inside of the color of that gown. And there's like a kind of like a vinegar smell to that. That was just fascinating. I feel like I was touching the history. I was talking to the past. So like Joy said, I feel like we were communicating with the past. And the video, I think our tagline was antiques, what is it?
Antiques speak to all of us.
Oh yeah, antiques speaks to all of us. If you listen, you will hear a story. So I feel like by doing this project, Bring History Life, we are telling the story of those memories. But maybe 50 years from now, what we're doing will become a memory as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, there it is. Thank you guys so much for joining us and being here today. Please come back and join us December the 10th, where we will do Identity, and 2 of our artists are here. Can you guys wave? They will be in the next show. They're being shy. They will be here in the next show. I'm not telling you their names because I want you to come back. I also want to thank our community partners. Can our community partners wave that are here today? I hope you had a chance to meet them as they were here. Please give a round of applause again to Miss Stephanie, Miss Langan, and also Sarah. Please give another round of applause to our artists and our moderator for being here. I appreciate you guys so much. Please make sure you go out this doorway, to the right, down the hall to see the exhibition. You see, I didn't tell you just go see it. I'm telling you which way to go. Thank you guys so much and enjoy your Saturday. We appreciate you joining us today. Thank you.